again, everyone, to America on Trial, where we talk about current issues in law, politics, and public policy. And tonight we have a distinguished panel with us. We have Fernando Leal, an attorney in New York City, Jeff Teichert, who is an assistant attorney general in Utah, and Guidry Stansonite, who is an immigration attorney in Miami, Florida. So let's get straight to the most important topic of the day, the midterm elections. Now, many people expected in the media and academia and the public, they expected a red wave. They expected the Republicans to take the House by a substantial margin, take the Senate, and really rebuke Joe Biden's agenda. But that didn't happen. And my question is, why? Fernando, let's start with you.
Well, the red wave was more like a red drizzle. And the truth is, it's that the Republicans put up a bunch of election deniers who are in bed with Trump, and it spooked people. I, for one, didn't vote for any Republican that was an election denier, and I have been a registered Republican since I was 18. It was one of the first things that I did right after I registered for the Selective Services. The Republican Party being in bed with Trump is what's undoing the Republican Party. Here in New York, for example, the Republicans did gain some seats, but Lee Zeldin, who was a Republican denier, lost, and very quickly. It wasn't neck and neck at any other point in time. Others who were running for state secretaries of state under an America First party, I think is what they were called, who were all election deniers, they all lost with the exception of one candidate. I thought you were going to ask a question.
Well, yeah, I'm going to ask a question because I'm a bit confused. Under Trump, we had the lowest unemployment rate for African Americans and Hispanics. We had a great economy. Under Biden, we've had inflation, high gas prices, the border we've been struggling with. So it would seem that based on these facts that we would have a red wave. And in fact, we saw in Florida, Ron DeSantis win by almost 20 points. So I'm kind of confused. We didn't have a red wave, but there seems to be a sentiment that does not support the Democratic Party either. So, Jeff, can you tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think Fernando is right. I do think people wanted change. They also don't like the thin-skinned one-termer who comes in, making up new names for people and making outrageous claims about his victory in the last election. I think that it does come down to Trump. Now, I had predicted the red wave. We didn't get really a wave. We got, if you believe MSNBC, they're projecting that the GOP will have 219 seats in the House and 216 for the Democrats, which would be a razor-thin majority to govern with. There are a number of important races in southern and central California, in Alaska, where, incidentally, former Governor Sarah Palin is running for the House, and then in Maine as well, and a couple of seats in New York, I think, are still that's undecided.
Yeah, that's certainly true. But Guidry, maybe you can clarify this for me. So, like I said, the economy is not doing well. Gas prices are high. We have issues at the border. Inflation is high. But it seems like voters focused on abortion. Is that true? And is that the reason why the red wave became essentially a red ripple?
Well, Adam, this is a great question. And it seems, based on the results, that the voters not only focused on abortion, but also focused on democracy. And I will go back and agree with what Jeff and Fernando said. It was dangerous for the Republican Party to become so extreme, including the election denials. People got sick of that a little bit overly extreme positions when it comes to everything. I think Republicans did a huge mistake when they, in the beginning, started completely abandoning women's right to abortion. That was extreme. I think it was extreme when we had January 6th event and we still had to deal with the investigation. People got sick of it. And The question here to ask is whether Trump is a toxic politician and whether Republican Party is going to separate itself from Trump.
Let me ask you this, okay? So in the Dobbs decision, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, the Supreme Court didn't outlaw abortion. The Supreme Court simply said that abortion was going to be decided by the states. So why are voters focusing so much on abortion when it's now a state level decision?
Well, because the states that actually Supreme Court overturned almost 50 years precedent, justifying it with different legal arguments, when that happened, the abortion, as you said, went straight to the states. And Republican parties, very vocal, started either incorporating the trigger laws that automatically abandoned the right to abortion, or started really fighting for against the women's right to abortion. And I think Abbott, Governor Abbott, tried to save it when he offered, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to remember, one of the Republicans tried to save it, saying, hey, abortion could be okay up until 15 weeks and we could all reach this agreement. Unfortunately, it was never done. He tried to save the situation, but it was a little bit too late and too little. And therefore, we also had those consequences when it comes to the midterm.
That's a good point. And Fernando, let me ask you this. So we have a lot of people talking about election deniers. But the truth of the matter is, on election night in 2020, Trump was ahead until about midnight. Everyone went to sleep, and all of a sudden, Biden was ahead. We also see that DeSantis, who was solidly conservative, was overwhelmingly elected in Florida. So what do you make of all this? And what can the Republican Party do to win over voters and maybe have a red wave in the future?
Well, in terms of DeSantis, if anybody's noticed, he doesn't align himself with Trump. He keeps himself at arm's length. He, keeps his course. He didn't deny the election results. He didn't say that Trump really won when he lost. In terms of, what was the other half of your question?
Well, just what the Republican Party can do to win over moderate voters.
In terms of, they're going to have to become somewhat consistent with what they're saying. They're, on the one hand, they say that they're the party for, less government intrusion, handle your business, but yet they turn around and they're all for telling women what to do, making abortions illegal, and sticking their hands up a woman's uterus and putting a lock on it and making them do what they want to say. That's completely inconsistent. How are you going to tell me on the one hand that we're the party of small government and that, we're going to reduce taxes, let businesses do whatever they want, but at the same token say, but when it comes to women, we're going to tell them what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And we're going to let the government do it. That makes no sense.
Well, I'll tell you, that's a really fair point. But Jeff, here's what I'm thinking. People typically vote with their wallets. When the economy is not good, when inflation is high, when we have issues affecting employment, the opposing party typically takes the House and, in many cases, the Senate. Why this time did the election defy historical trends?
Well, like I said before, I think they didn't want a thin-skinned one-termer coming back, and they wanted to send a message on that. I also think that the voters didn't necessarily want one side or the other to have a mandate out of this election. Now, in terms of what the Republican Party could do, honestly, I think Ron DeSantis is at his Obama moment where he's hot right now. He has a chance to move forward and at least make a good run for the White House. Florida did experience a wave that the rest of the country missed out on. And a lot of that is because DeSantis, love him or hate him, is a strong leader. He did a great job with the hurricanes and all of that has come up. And he has attacked the problems that have faced Floridians, including, he had an unconventional approach to COVID. He's had a pretty strong economy. And so I think ultimately what the Republican Party needs is new leadership. And I've heard a lot of people sort of fatalistically say, all right, well, if Trump runs again, the party's just going to give it to him. I hope not.
That's a good point. And then let me ask you this, Peter. Why do people care so much about Donald Trump, who has not been the president for 2 years? Why don't they care more about inflation and the economy? Why wasn't this more a referendum on Biden's policies?
Adam, you know what? I'm asking myself that every single day, or mostly.
Me too.
We are in a very, very weird time right now. American politics clashing all over the place. More and more people are identifying as homeless when it comes to their political party or political idea followings. So I think it is a existential political crisis in the United States, and therefore we have such inconsistent results. When it comes to DeSantis, I would like to add to Jeff, being Floridian myself. In Florida, he's really loved, and the big difference between DeSantis and all other candidates, political candidates, is that when he speaks to the people, he says, I did it. I took care of COVID. I was there once an hour during the hurricane preparation and post. You know, he could give the numbers. He could talk about small businesses. He did it. Majority of other politicians are saying, we will do, I can do. And I think people are a little bit sick of that narrative, myself including.
Okay, that's a fair point. And I agree with you. But the three of you have brought up DeSantis. And that brings up the question, what's going to happen in 2024? We know that Trump has already insulted DeSantis, but we know DeSantis won in a landslide in Florida. So, Jeff, when you talk about leadership in the Republican Party, is DeSantis the future of the Republican Party? And do you believe he'll run in 2024 for the White House?
I would say yes to both. I think if he's smart, he understands that he can't wait and just concede to Trump in the next election. Even if he loses to Trump, but he makes it competitive, increases his star power through the campaign. We've seen many others do that. George Bush did that when he was running before he was running against Reagan, and then he ran with him, and 8 years later, he was the nominee. So I think DeSantis can position himself for a future run by running in 2024.
What do you think, Fernando?
A long 2 years from now. I think he throws his hat in the ring. Whether he wins or loses, who knows? Whether Trump runs, who knows? And part of the reason is that his biggest supporters, like the New York Post, are starting to turn against him, and they're blaming him for the fact that there wasn't a red wave. Trump is an individual who wants to be liked and loved. Once he starts getting negative press, he has a tendency to shrink back, and that's been his MO here in New York City since forever. He used to call the Daily News and People magazine with a fake voice, saying that he was Trump's media manager, so on and so forth, to build up goodwill and good press for him. So if things start turning against him, I don't see him running. I see him trying to sit on the sideline like a petulant child and trying to destroy somebody's candidacy.
Yeah, that's a great.
Now he's picking on DeSantis.
That's certainly a great point. And one question I want to pose to all three of you is, the results of this midterm, I don't think just speak to Trump. I think they speak to the Republicans' failure to offer solutions to the problem facing most Americans. So I'd like to know, and let's start with you, Guidry, what do Republicans need to do to reestablish their leadership and to propose policies that are going to help the American people and help them at the polls?
Well, I think number one, they need to separate themselves from Trump. And I think we will see right now, a lot of Republicans, right after the midterms, started blaming Trump for their for the numbers that they dislike, and very, very shocking numbers. We really need to take a minute here to say that the results of midterms is completely unprecedented. The results of midterms provide President Biden with a stronger assurance to run for the second term. He feels more comfortable talking about it, and we'll see how it's gonna go and how it's going to develop. But Republican Party, I think, one, they need to become a little bit more realistic, and I think they need to leave aside the extremism. Period.
I totally agree with you. But Jeff, I'm kind of a little bit. I'm not sure I can reconcile these two things. I think that this vote shows, coupled with Biden's low approval, that voters really don't support the Democratic Party or their policies, but they also don't support the Republicans or their parties. So how are the Republicans going to provide leadership that's going to distinguish them and put them back in leadership?
See, I think when Americans look at the Trump presidency, they like the policies, they like the economic results that he got, but they don't like the thin-skinned one-termer that's constantly whining. And I think a lot of people have Trump fatigue. They don't necessarily want to see him back on the scene. So I think a lot of the policies that Trump advocated, tighter controls on immigration, competitive trade policies with China. I mean, go down the list of the policies. I think a lot of people liked it. I just think they didn't like the messenger.
And this actually, that's a great point. And Fernando, I want to get your take on this, because the truth of the matter is the economy under Trump, the border under Trump, unemployment under Trump, all before COVID, was far better than under President Biden. So I understand, Fernando, that people may not like the way Trump talks or his tweets, but why aren't they saying at the end of the day, look, the country was better under Trump in terms of his policies?
Because COVID hit and he mismanaged it. Biden, in all honesty, is just feeling the effects of what happened under COVID, where everybody got shut in and nobody was working. So although people in this country may have started going back to work, and a vast majority have, the rest of the world kind of hasn't. They're still kind of trickling in to their jobs, and that holds up production of goods. It's not like we make every single nut, bolt, and nail in this country. That stuff's imported. Some of it's imported. We don't make every single piece of rubber, every rubber tire. Those things are imported. And in those countries, people haven't necessarily all gone back to work, and production hasn't ramped up 100%. I think that part of this election also is that Americans have never liked to work on the extreme margins. We are a country that is in the middle, always has been, always will be. And the more you try to pull to one side, then the next side starts to pull, it expands, and then it snaps back. Whether you're talking about the 60s, whether you're talking about prohibition.
Okay, that's
one side.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The other came right back to the middle.
Well, then I'd like to ask just one more question of the panel. It's incredible how divisive this country has become. And the hope ultimately is that we can come back to a place where we recognize our common values and unify. So what do you think is going to happen in 2024? Are we going to get there, or is it going to be more of the same? Guidry.
Adam, I think that change could happen anytime. So right now we are celebrating, Democrats are celebrating, President Biden is celebrating, because midterms, let's agree, it's a win for the Democrats. Yet, we should not, or people should not get comfortable with that idea, because things could switch and turn, and we've seen that. And therefore, what's going to happen in 2024 is very difficult to predict. I think we're going to have to deal with several roller coasters before getting there. I think DeSantis, based on all the numbers, 19-point margin winning the midterms, and could be a good candidate for the Republican Party to follow and to support.
Guidry, thank you. Fernando, I'm going to give you the last word.
I don't think this country is as divided as the media makes it out to be. Division is a great seller of advertisement and a great seller of news. So I think the media does pick and choose the areas that show the most division in the country, because it'll bring eyeballs to the screen. I think that most people are in the middle somewhere, and they don't like to hear someone say that all elections are rigged. So we have to put people in place who are going to guarantee that the next time Trump wins, he's going to win. Nobody likes to hear that, myself included. Because I believe in our system, I believe in our Constitution. And what they're talking about is completely abrogating the Constitution and changing it to what they want it to be. But yet, when they run under these same exact rules and they win, the system's perfect and it's fine.
Yeah, you make a great point. And
I think that the Republican Party has to get more in line with women's rights, because as long as they keep doing what they're doing in terms of abortion and other issues, they're going to alienate women within their own party.
True. And I'll offer one final thought, and that's I think we need to see the reemergence of moderate leaders who are willing to compromise, who have values and integrity, who know how to, reach across the aisle, and who truly care about making the country better for the American people. And with that, thank you guys for a wonderful discussion, and good night. Okay, and today's hot take, Santa Claus. Do you tell your children that Santa Claus is real or fake? Idri, start us off.
Oh my gosh, what a silly question. Of course, Santa Claus is real. To this day, I believe in Santa Claus, and I think every single child has a right, actually, to believe. So parents, please don't tell that. Leave the magic alive.
Fernando.
I say keep the magic going and let your kids find out the old-fashioned way when they get old enough that they start sneaking around the house and they find their Christmas presents the way my brother and I did. Then we keep our mouths shut. And then we try to steer our parents by saying, yeah, we believe in Santa. Man, I really hope Santa gets me this, because this is really what I want. Do you think he's going to get it for me, Mom? Do you think he's going to get it for me, Dad? That's what we should do.
Jeff.
I hate to make it 3 for 3, but I agree with what Giadra said. Keep the magic alive. We encourage kids to use their imagination in all kinds of ways when they're children. We read them, fantasy books and all kinds of things. This isn't really different from that. We're doing something to make Christmas a little bit magical for them. I raised 2 kids. I'm helping raise 2 more that are now old enough that they don't believe. But yeah, let the little ones have their fun.
Well, as far as I go, I don't care about the answer to the question. I just want really cool presents at Christmas. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.